Good afternoon, traders, investors, punters, and dribblers, to another Traders Community podcast, and a very somber day. And we have the glorious Madavi with us, and his partner in crime, G. Well, a very poignant day, obviously, with what happened overnight and through this morning and ongoing with Vladimir Putin attacking Ukraine. And it's also a good reminder that I often remember, don't be emotional. Don't take your personal views, how they will affect your trading. And I can say that wholeheartedly because, as most of you know, or many of you know, that many of my descendants and relatives are actually in Estonia, Finland, and some in Latvia. So, and obviously I have many, just through our Intel for Business, people in Ukraine and Russia as well. So, and just as a little point, if you're wondering who the lady is on the front of our podcast, it is also Independence Day in Estonia. So a very poignant day from anyone specifically from Estonia or Finland and Latvia, that region, who would most likely have relatives in that situation. And many of Estonian descent, as you know, are in Canada, the United States, Australia, in particular, is where the diaspora was. So a shout out to that, but it's important to understand what has happened. It's pretty incredible to me in 2022 in a civilized part of the world and a world that had buried the hatchet. It goes on. I've mentioned before people were upset the way it became a political issue for Biden and the administration, because if this could have been resolved a long time ago, one way or the other, without this kind of thing, and the disgust you cannot underestimate about Putin, not just by people in that region, but also by everyday Russian. Remember, your leader doesn't necessarily mean the people. So if you don't like what he's doing, doesn't mean you have to dislike Russians. And if you don't like what Biden's doing or Trump's doing, you don't have to dislike Americans, etc., etc. That should apply to every country. And there's just too much bigotry and ignorance in the world. As Madavi also pointed out the other day with what goes on, in Iran, the Middle East, and Persia, etc. So without further ado, just wanted to bring that up. So it's important. The reason, too, obviously, we have feelings about it, but to point out not to have those biases when you trade, right, mate? It's very important. So we obviously, let's get on. So we're going to discuss that. We just wanted to discuss that up the top so we all know. And I'm pretty intolerant of ignorance when it comes to that sort of stuff, particularly, just ignorance. Like, on Twitter, people, all of a sudden, experts are bloody everything. They have no effing clue what they're talking about. If you're not from the region and you think it's funny, shut the F up. Anyway, we're going to talk about after hours. We traded, what did we trade, mate? Beyond Meat. It's almost compulsory for me to trade that. Coin, Madavi traded Coin, DELL, and we're all Etsy, right?
Etsy?
Yeah, Etsy. And so we'll walk you through that because we talked about that yesterday, how we traded it, and we had options on it, and why we got out. And if you look at that chart, you'll see why, right? Particularly if you take out the overnight. So we'll specifically talk about our trades on the S&P, which you know about, Nasdaq, how they all set up, and more than ever, you can see how you got to have a strategy, right? And how it all plays out, and how you just got to be cold-hearted about the trading aspect. That's why I wanted to mention that at the top of the hour. And you'll see on the charts, And we're being very upfront about our position. So hopefully people followed us I don't mean blindly followed what we were doing, and hope some of you enjoyed in it. So without further ado, let's whack up the charts. And thank you again from Sierra Chart. Great charts that fit us perfectly. So oil, for non-oil people, that always gets, when anything involves war or countries that are big producers or users of commodities, it gets a heck of a lot of airplay, doesn't it? So for oil, obviously, anything involving war, oil-producing countries, Russia, Texas, Middle East, commodities, it's always a big thing. But what happens is, and gold's another one like this, people that aren't typically in it tend to get caught in it at the wrong end. And we saw that last night. And a lot of it's because of clickbait headlines. Brent got the 105s, WTI over 100. And if you call lower our target. So be clinical, don't get caught in it. And it'll happen, it's natural. Or don't trade it. Natgas got up towards $5. Not quite, but close enough. So they were on moves that were extended and unrelated. And you know it's going to happen. The inverse happened on the S&P and Nasdaq. Incredible bounces, really. I mean, it hit our target, expected to bounce, but not that much. So we'll talk about that. Gold had a big swing also up and came back. What else did we? Oh, that's right. Roman was mentioning Bitcoin. That was a crazy big bounce too, right? Am I missing anything before we get started? I think that's it, right? Bonds also safe haven, right? So we'll talk about that as well. And also to do on that end is, you saw early in the morning the the ECB economist, I think it was, but one of the members saying that perhaps they should look at extending QE longer. Or they didn't word it like that, buying bonds. So that's an important thing. We go on about interest rates, but really what's important or significant for the Fed is the bond buying, right? As far as the stock market goes. Anyway, so here we are before we start, 94.70 on crude, 42.67 on SPOOs, Russell 1983, the Volex is at 29.35, NAS is 13.87, and Natty is 460.09. So let's start with the SPOOs, because that's what we kind of our main, not necessarily the main thing we trade, well, it's pretty well me, but what we watch, right? So with emotion, obviously no one likes war, right? We all know that. So, well, some people might, I guess, but so it's people becoming emotion, they're upset by it, right? You see the vision on TV and etc. Remember, that's kind of why it really, not just as a biased Estonian descendant, I guess, but and a biased Estonian, but to say don't let that affect you, because what it does, and this is another reason why, and I mentioned Wi-Fi Alpha yesterday, what I like about what they do is algorithms. What I like about what we do, obviously I like it, NovaWave, is the mathematical aspect. It's clinical. And what I like about what Madavi does is involved in all that, but also very, very good at watching order flow. So in panic situations, which is what it becomes, right? Particularly if you haven't been like us and other just traders, just not hesitant and trading the downswing and having these targets, and not just talking about them on bloody Twitter or in a room, actually living them, right? And understanding what it means. So the order flow is very relevant, right? Futures, stocks. I mean, you did some. So I was pretty well. So futures and oil, obviously oil and gas was pretty well me for the last 24 hours. But some of those stocks you did, Madavi, what was it? Snap? Do you want to talk us through what you saw on that before we get into the futures? Because these are the sort of things I think people want to understand or should understand.
Yeah.
I should get you a chart, I guess. While you're talking, I'll create a chart.
Get a chart of it.
Yeah, I'll grab one up. Hang on, mate.
Let me get.
So then we'll talk about that first, because that's a real good. You know what? Let's do it on a big chart. So futures is one thing, but a lot of people. When I looked at some of these charts today.
Well, the first thing is, the sentiment with all these earnings has been positive. So that tells me which way to lean to. Have you noticed that? If the markets, if all these stocks come out with positive earnings, a lot of them follow through the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely an overshoot. They either collapse or rip off, but we'll see today. But the one I wanted to really, so we as you know, Madavi's had a big short on Snap. I think he shorted up around $40 or something, right?
Yeah.
And then yesterday, he talked me into shorting it, and I'm thankful for that, right? But I shorted it via put. So I bought. I'll have to look at it. I think I bought 35s, right? Yeah. So I bought puts, and you bought stocks. You shorted stocks, sorry.
I bought the stock in it. So, with the sentiment and everything coming up, the one question is with these, ever since Facebook came out, these, what is it called, social media companies has put a big doubt in because Facebook was the one that could never fail, right?
Yeah, they were too big to fail, and everyone forgave. So it's interesting when people talk about evil people, and obviously Putin's front of the line right now, but a lot of people seem to forgive Zuckerberg and Facebook for all their violation of the privacy and all that. I know it's a different thing, but it's funny what people, and then all of a sudden they all pile onto it, don't they? Now that everyone else is.
People want to make their free phone calls and stuff like that. So Facebook offers all these little cute little things. Go on a date, whatever.
Really? Fill me in on that.
Yeah, they got a little dating app there now. And whatever, if you want to use their free phone calls, check out your friends' photos, whatever. So here's when the earnings came out, right? So the first move, like I always said, you see this gap, always a head fake.
Which one's this? Snap?
Oh, is that? I think so. You put the chart up.
Yeah, I put Snap up. You're not looking at it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
But that's Snap, yeah?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry.
I talked about the first move's always the head fake one.
Yep.
So look at that. We dropped down. We actually went down below 35 too.
Yeah, this is tonight.
But yeah. So I picked this. I didn't get it over here at 35 because I thought I might dump down lower. This could be another Facebook moment. So it was about, I got it around 36.20. And it made a nice cranky move up there. Look at that. It didn't make it 40, but it got it up there. So I got a couple points out of it and didn't really feel it pulling back. I thought this thing was going to keep going. But I thought I got out early. So I got out, whatever we got. I got in at 36, rode it all the way up to 37, and I've seen it still going up. And I got back in at 36.20, and I took it to about 36.50, and I got it there. And that was basically I tried to do a short on it, and it wouldn't go down. And so
Well, that's on that one. Yeah, that was nice trading. But remember, first thing in the morning, because you were texting me at 3:00 your time, right?
Yeah.
So we all came in short here. So that was nice because the fact you reacted.
If you remember, I came in short in it because I helped in shorts from yesterday.
Right.
So this morning when it got down at 35s, I covered it, and then I started trading other things.
Right. So that was a beautiful trade. That was the point I wanted to hyper out. But you took profit. You didn't wait. You saw the level. And what's interesting, so it often depends on what you trade, like what instrument you trade. So I shorted this via options. So I bought puts.
Filled.
Huh? So something got filled. Hang on, sorry. Let me just check that. Okay. So by the time options opened, this was up here. So you made dollars on this trade.
Yeah.
Like $3.
Well, I took advantage of it as soon as I seen it down like that.
Yeah.
This stock's been bouncing a lot. If you look at this thing,
Opening order filled.
This thing has been bouncing a lot.
Yeah. So it's been incredible. So here's what I had to do to act. So I had the puts. And down here, I didn't bother, right? Madavi's out. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'll see how it opens. But in that time of waiting, the stock rallied. So by the time it opened, I made like 22 cents on the puts. Granted, it's different delta and all that. So, and I actually shorted the puts as well. I went the other way and made a little bit, mainly because some of that was just, there was no market maker, so I got overfilled a few times. But the point I'm trying to make is, where the instrument, now what I could have done, I wasn't expecting this bounce. I'd snap, right? And we'll go through the other stocks in a minute. But I could have bought the stock knowing full well, I had 35 puts. I could have bought, what would have been better, I should have covered this, Madavi, when you did and bought the stock. The same way that you had that those calls into Etsy today when we talk about that. So that's one, because I didn't see the necessity of it, but I should have been clinical. It was 08s and etc. So I just wanted to walk through that trade before the market, as we talked about futures, because that was a really I like the way not only you were clinical in buying it, but you actually went long as well, right? Once it started going up. So
yeah. Try to play both sides of it. It was a good trade. I mean, Snap's been moving. I mean, man, it's been going in a big range for that stock lately. I mean, and it picks up. So yesterday I shorted it, and it just kept it ranked all the way up, if you remember. Then it came all the way back down.
Yeah.
Where I was breaking even because I got in bad prices.
Yeah, you went a little bit early. Yep. But you believed in the trade, and you had optionality to protect you. So you actually made a lot of money selling puts, if you recall, against it, like 2 weeks ago or something.
Well, that was the insurance, right?
Yeah, that was from Geico.
Yeah.
So if we look at, so moving along, let's go back to futures. So to put all this into perspective, this is oil, so we want to look at our SPOOs. So as you know, our target on the weekly, what we've been doing off these waves, so we came all the way down. As we said last night, what was bizarre last night, if those were on live with us, I actually got a call, if you remember, about 2 hours before it was happening, from and not from a family friend, but from an Intel associate in the Ukraine, that they were going to get attacked by Russia. Remember that? In 2 hours. People thought that was bullshit. It was dead right, to the bloody minute. Scary, actually, how premeditated it was. But it enabled us, and those, I guess you had to know that I wasn't full of it, like the dribblers out there, to add to short, and if you had length, to get out of it. So anyway, it happened. It broke that level, remember? That's what we were watching. We ran it down, and on the weekly you could see there was some support, but really no man's land if you're just an average trader, Joe, on charts. So moving along, we see that beautiful kiss of death. We then, remember, scale down. So that's daily. Where's our weekly? So in our weekly, we also knew It stands out even more there. We knew we were right at the top. If you remember, we compared Nasdaq and S&P. So we knew that the train was on. It goes down again. So we see it stalling this morning. And really, it's when it gets... So remember, it's machines. This is why I go on a little bit about emotional stuff. Don't let it affect you. That's why I brought up the Estonian part. There's not many. I give you a tip. There's not many Australian Estonians living in Texas. So anyway, we're very much a minority. But you probably go, "What the hell's he talking about?" So we get so you obviously know. You can see where the stops kicked in a little bit. They kicked in hard when it got back over 4,200. Now a lot of that, I mean, and we discussed it. It's a pity Checkmate isn't here, but. So we saw daily. Now we look at the 240. This was just a clinical bloody trade. This is beautiful. So you had the double bottom, and remember I showed you Snap earlier. So Madavi's just one of the best I've seen at reading order flow. So he's trading this stuff pre-market. So you have to have that, right? A chart on Snap isn't going to do you a lot of good when there's you're like there's just not the size out there, right? So he was able to read that. I then come over to this minus 4/8, not once but twice. So this is where I did all the covering and buying, right here, remember? And it took me a while. I had a lot of bloody positions. It took me a good 20 minutes, probably, right? Get out all those options and futures and then. Yeah, and so I had to, I was getting overfilled and fucking, what the hell am I? What am I in, right? And at different platforms, etc. Anyway, all jokes aside, this is why I mentioned 2 blokes yesterday, actually 4 blokes yesterday, that 2 on VIX and Velocity and Commodity Vol and also CFL Trader and Wi-Fi Alpha is they're all automated clinical guys, pros, know their shit, basically. Excuse the French. Why? Look at what we use, NovaWave. All maths, right? And the reason we use Sierra charts, it's one of the few I can actually program my stuff on it. So it's all mathematics. That's the point I'm trying to make. What Madavi's watching is he's a bit of a savant for maths too, is he knows the levels, he sees the orders, and he sees where it runs out. Now, we tend to get in a little bit early if we just use our own opinion, right? So that's why we need it as kind of a handbrake for us. But look how clinical that is. Clinical, right?
Yeah.
And
nice move.
Yeah, very nice. And it went more than what we said. We're just going to be bloody more than what we thought, let's be honest. And we'll go through that later bit of the trade. But
and being up like it was, I mean, it tanked down. Look at the first move. I mean, that thing looked like it was going to shatter. It was going to be a Facebook moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at this. So, we're then later on in the spoos. So, my feeling was, just being around too long, I thought this market's short. I thought the dribblers have been non-stop. Oh, don't, buy the dip. They're all in glare. They're mocking shorts, all this shit. I've said a lot of that today, but I'm just kind of tired of them when I see what's going on in the world.
The afternoon was just, something I got twisted around that afternoon.
Yeah. So 600 handles here, and they're still criticising blokes that can trade and do it. You follow any of these, you need to just chunk them, unless you want them as a, what do you call it? Like Gartman and that. You go the other way, right? Yeah. But it's not even worth it for that. It's very tiring and very boring.
If they're on the same side as me, I need to switch positions.
Right. I'm trying to. It's contrarian. So very annoying. But my gut feeling was a lot of that finally puked here. All of a sudden I think things like war are relevant. Look, as I said up front, it's kind of played out how I thought in the sense that the wag the dog of energy and all this, and I thought Putin would use it a little bit of nationalism for the enclaves, but I did not think he'd do an all-out assault. That totally took me by surprise, and a lot of people by surprise. all out, I mean, into the Ukrainian part of Ukrainian, using Belarus. There's some pretty nasty shit went on there. Don't underestimate how his thought process to be like that. And I joke, perhaps, the one thing is perhaps he's nuts, right? I watched his speech, and there was a lot of good stuff, obvious stuff there. But I didn't, in saying all that, you just didn't know. But I think what happened is they weren't aware of what's going on, because most people just follow people, they're sheeple. So this happened, it's all over the news, it's bad, there's scenes of bombings. I mean, people kept retweeting the same bloody photos from other people, just very annoying.
You know, a lot of photos and stuff could be a bunch of fake stuff too.
Well, it's real, but actually, you got a good point. Good point. There were some photos I saw, or movie, what do you call them? Videos that were old, right? From back in 2008. But the point I'm trying to make is they just repeat it and repeat it. And a lot of these so-called influencers, or people want to be influenced, and a lot of these dribblers that are in FibTwit, or that's why I call it FibTwit, they're full of, So that doesn't help the case. You want to be fresh. So again, have your strategy. Don't be dissuaded. Have good fair income. That you'll notice if we retweet stuff, it's usually the source. If not, we'll acknowledge it. It's one, and it's only if it's relevant. I don't want to. And none of us at Use Traders Comp, we don't want to murky the picture or anything like that. So this is why this sort of stuff's clinical. And so down here, and so it felt like those people had finally puked. And when we look at some of the dribbler stocks today, amazing moves, amazing down and then up. And we remember that through the day, there was stuff that by the time I got to it, because I had so much in what I do, they were just gone, really. But anyway, so technically, board here stayed long for most of this. It got a little bit quirky in here. There's a 240 chart. And so here, I expected better selling off this, because we're retesting. We're over 08. We're retesting that breakdown, and that's what Madavi was talking about. Right there. And if we go to the daily, so remember, hourly, you can see it more specific, right? So initially it banged the 50, came off. So we shorted off this, good level, right? Technically, look where we are. And right at that time, I think Biden was talking. So it went up, down. So there's, bots, trade-off, that sort of stuff. And then it got over it, which meant a small loss here, but not major. From there, that was just all momentum. So if we go back to 240, you can see. So here's that buy to the Cajun, same thing. So I'm guessing, or submitting, looking at the order flow and volume, that people got caught short here. And it may have been Madavi not just shorting down the bottom, but dumping their stock at losses. And if they're mutual fund, hedge fund types, they've got to buy it back. And that explains these big moves in stocks. This is just futures, so this is big. But when you look at some of the individual stocks, it's even more astonishing moves, right? SD went $50, 109 to 160. I know there's earnings in there, but still.
Hey, remember, me and mate sold calls, and the one thing we missed was the earnings at first, right?
Yeah, let me bring that up.
But that could have been really fatal if we would have came into their earnings, but now we're stuck until tomorrow.
Well, that's a good... So we're not going to do that, and I'm going to go through that why. But, where the heck is it?
No, I made mistakes like that. Not if all of a sudden forgetting, thinking I got a great position on. I'm in the money.
Well, so we're not going to forget about it. But a lot of people do. So a lot of people who sell vol, this is a chart, it's unbelievable. So a lot of people who sell vol, and I was at a hedge fund where a bloke used to do this, and he'd count it as a profit. So they were hopeful that it would run to the end, right? Wow, okay. So they were hopeful that it would run to the end, and so they wouldn't take profit on it. So it was a great short of vol, but you had to be mindful of how long you held it. So we sold it. We got 5.10 or something. Covered it on day 2, I think, right? Oh, you covered yours a little bit earlier, but I covered it day 2 here.
Couple in the afternoons.
So I got like 2 out of it, maybe. So I'm out of it, right as a test. As what I told you everyone yesterday, anyway. So after hours, it dribbled down, right? And then Putin did his here. So look at this. So you're a very important point. I don't have a problem selling them ahead of earnings because I don't get that vol because I know vol comes in 2 to 3 days. But what you can't do is what Madavi's saying. You go home here, you think, there's only $1 left in it, I'll just let it expire, right? Obviously it's not going down. And I looked at it this morning, there was no bid and it was 25 cents off it, that same option. What I obviously should have done in Johnny hindsight was buy it, but I didn't know it was going to 160, right? But so be aware of it. Take your profits. I tend to take them a little bit early. It's because I don't want to take them late. So just think you did do that trade and you were the 135 calls and you did it just to keep your $5. Nice. Mindless to this. So right now, you are, it got up to 160, what did I get to, mate? 163 and a half. So it's 151.50. You're down $15 now in the hole. You sold it for $5. You're down $10, right? So you've got to be aware of those risks and take advantage of them. Now, here's the other side of the coin. So both of us, for margin and protection, bought calls. So upside calls. So it's short at 135. You bought 145s, right? So think about this. So what's happened is covered the trade, took profit, uncovered the vol sold, but kept the 135 because they were like 30 cents or something. And usually that's going to expire worthless. So we'll walk us through what happened there, Madavi. So they just blow. So firstly, they get the run back to 135, right? We could have actually, which is basically was the strike. That's a massive bloody run. So this is before earnings. This was $30 move. This gives you an idea, and this is one of our dribbler stocks. Not a totally dribble, but it's a semi-dribbler because it's in that sector. They're not worthless, to be the main ones, the Fubos, the Palantirs, all that sort of stuff. But anyway.
So I got short a little bit, but I kept on going. It was like then reversed and got back on the right side. But good thing I had this big old run, so I saw a lot more cash to make. Well,
so importantly, he's long at 145 all of a sudden. All of a sudden, those calls come live. So I'm like, shit, mate, you still got those? He goes, yeah. I said, dude, you own them at 145 at 30.
Yeah.
So he basically, and this is why I never worry about taking profit too early. So he sold at 151, 153. So he's just sold, locked in, $6 and $8 on his calls. Yes, it went to 163, but who cares? You've just made that money. I mean, I know you care, but...
Yeah. When it went to 147, I covered it and I started trading it. Remember?
Yeah. So, but you see, so that's a great way to use your optionality. Now, so in natural gas and oil, over the years, I've made a lot, and this went on bigger and size and thousands of lots and stuff. So this is what goes on. I would have, and I can't mention who would sell it, but it was all the time. You will know who they are. They're all in the news. They get blamed for a lot. Anyway, you could buy a same-day option for 10 cents on crude. Often they expire worthless. And all of a sudden they hit and you're doing size, right? And I know of one instance where, we're talking millions of dollars in these sort of things. But that same ideology, a lot of people in options, this is why I say on options all the time on things I trade community on Twitter, forget the bullshit. The charms and all this sort of stuff. If you're not trading vol, that does not matter, right? you should already know the OI lines or the gamma lines, whatever you want to call them, if you're doing what we're doing. Directional traders, forget. It's why I'm really tiring of the dribblers, right? If you haven't bloody noticed. Have we, Madame? Because it's worthless and it can steer down the wrong thing and it dresses it up. You want to be hard and clinical. So you own this stuff, you own it cheap, you use it as length. All of a sudden he's long. Boom. You use that, and that's what same-day options are for, if you SDOs. So that's effectively what that became. I mean, it's basically same-day because it expires tomorrow. So there's lots of opportunity like that. Now, so the smart people that aren't the dribblers took advantage of that in GME. That's what really happened there. Good hedge funds took on that same guy that's selling them thinking they're nothing, easy money, easy money. Then you get one at the end of the bell curve, right? And so one day I'll get Greg on in it. He's really good at this with commodity vol. And we'll talk even more from the hardcore clinical. But as a trader, that's where you look for opportunity. I mean, there's been a few who've been lucky on, right, Madavi? So remember that? There was that trade car. That was, stuff like that. I mean, this is the real world. It happens, right? That was insane. I never seen a 500 like yeah,
that.
I think I spent a week at church after that, thanking my lucky stars. But the reality is you allow these to happen if you give the chance, right?
But I never usually carry options into earnings like that. So that was incredible. I mean, that's
today, it's a really nice dude.
That's a once in a lifetime trade.
Which one? The car one?
The car one.
Oh, yeah. That was grateful. But you just had it's not the same, but the reason I'm saying it is two things. Risk, if you're the seller, and that's why Madavi's hammering on about it with the earnings. Very good point. Second point is, sometimes we got 2 or 3 cents left on an option, and or 20, and we just chunk it. At that point, you can see here it's worth having it, right? Look what Madavi's just pulled out of that. $8, right? Just on this one. We're talking about another example of that the other way. If you recall, at the end of the day yesterday, I was more worried about vol in some puts I had on, right? In the SPY. So I bought those back. I'd bought for 31, sold them for 48. They traded at $2 this morning. Now, that is Johnny hindsight, yes, but right before it, I made a comment at Madavi. Hey, man, have you seen all these? There's a lot of puts going, thousands of lots were going through. If I wasn't tired at the end of the day, heavy day trading, I would have known just to keep them. And that's a lot of money involved in that. I'm not going to say how many I had or anything, but obviously 48 cents versus 210 or 220 went higher than that. I really don't want to look at it. Just so all that stuff you want to understand in your book when you're playing. And that's what the good hedgies, good traders will do, right? It may look like it's gambling, it ain't. We're trying to use our maximum risk advantage, and we'll take profit too early when it's there, yes, but it's all part of the matrix, right? Your trading should be mechanical and mathematical. Sorry.
So nowadays, when I barely go on options into earnings, that's one thing is like, man, because you're stuck. You can't get out until the next day.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why I did that, and I thought I didn't want to pay vol. So silly.
Not if you bought them, but if you sold them. If you sold any of those, man, you're.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So if buying them is totally different because I can only lose what I paid for the premiums, right? And if you sell them, you can only make what the premiums are, but your other side's unlimited.
Yeah, so you got to know 100%, and that's why I harp on about the simple bit, the delta and the theta and stuff like that.
And selling those, just like we did the trade with the SE, is a checklist. Like I'm about to fly. I go through my checklist patterns and make sure any of those risk factors are not there.
Yeah, you want to know. So the key thing is, what am I doing wrong here? Hang on. The key thing is you got to know your risk, right? Well, while we're on it, given we're on Etsy here, let's talk about the stocks we did And we'll go back to the futures and oil and stuff. I know a bunch of you just want to hear the oil and natty, which is important, very important. So we won't, usually we talk about that a bit earlier, so I apologise, but it is a lot of stuff we want to get through, and we try to just pass on the good and bad. And daylight today, there's just so much good information we can pass on. So all I traded was Beyond Meat and Etsy. The calls I bought were higher than 145, so mine went worthless, and Madavi bought 145. So I didn't have the advantage of that trade. Nice work there, mate. And I said, how come you bought them rather than, because it gave him much better margin protection. I didn't need the margin, so kind of paid for it there, I guess, mate. God works in mysterious ways, right? So Dell, you traded. If you want to walk us through that, it's not as heavily traded, so I got to get a different time frame.
It's kind of thin.
Yeah, I noticed that on the 30-second chart.
And they'll end up missing, and you see, well, as soon as I see nothing missing, I got a nice little short for like a point out of it.
What am I doing?
A point and a half I made out of it.
Yeah, so, okay, here we go. So Dell missed, right, looking at this, obviously?
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm hesitant shortening after just getting clobbered in the afternoon. After the morning. And it's like, man, so as soon as they missed, I made sure a little bit, so I got it a little bit later than I would like to, but I wanted to be sure in that thing, because that thing's very thin to get in and out in, and it went down nicely, and they had to throw a dividend in after the crappy earnings.
Well, he's got to give Michael Dell needs a paycheck, I guess.
Exactly.
Look at how thin this was this morning. So this is what you got to be careful if you got to have your wits about you. Don't sell at all costs. But this could have been margin selling. And I often say, and when we get to our positions on oil and everything, is you buy the puts when you want to or when you can, not when you have to. Same thing is, that's why you don't want to, you're always aware of your equity, and you don't want to be this bloke. This could have been someone having to sell his portfolio, like a bunch of people that just weren't aware and of the market risk. So whether you're an investor on one end in time, a professional trader, a punter, just like the fast stuff, or just a total dribbler who may not even have a position or just following everyone, and it's just a perfect word for that scenario. You got to be aware of your risk. Just a lot of people think, and it really grinds my gears actually when I hear on someone like CNBC these analysts come on, the Tom Lees and all these that don't really have the skin in the game in the way they imply, and they just they just say it and they just talk about when they're right, never when they're wrong, and that's what most of the dribblers are like on Twitter and stuff, right? Yeah, unbelievable, right? They're all telling you to buy the top. Oh, no, I never said that. Next minute, they're all bears or whatever and just blowing themselves up and everyone else up. It's very common.
A lot of these guys go on these little podcasts and they recommend those, then they deny it.
Very common.
I'm going to go bring up your stuff.
That's why I mentioned that Tom Lee side of that, right? And so they go, but the thing that grind my gear was this one comment. And I banned CNBC a long time ago, but every night, someone will send me, share it with me. And he goes, well, you haven't lost until you sold, right? So you can't, and it's like, hang on, these things may never come back. They could be margin. Who knows? It affects everything. So just be very aware. That's why I say trade at the market. You have long-term views and strategies that you've all seen. That's how we trade it. But you never, ever, ever, ever get away from that. And you never fall in love with anything, like I said.
Here's another thing. Like yesterday that eBay came and eBay missed and they gave a bad forecast. Usually the market punishes those stocks the next day. But this market somehow got this bid underneath it, and it took eBay up there, and I'm still short a little bit, but man, did it cost me.
Yeah. So it's hard to. That's why I'm very clinical. I'm all math, good at and I guess my strength comes from being able to read a card. I'm good at poker, I guess.
Oh yeah.
There's some stories there, but we'll leave them alone.
So if you look at the rest of the stocks that are, the market will reward you, but when you miss it, it will punish you. And I guess eBay escaped that until another day. But I think tomorrow it should come in. But look at that! Look at how much they ran that thing back up.
Which one, eBay or? Oh, we'll look at that in a sec. So Dell, you just scalped this basically, right? So,
I did one quick trade in it. I didn't want to mess. Dell's kind of thin. I didn't want to mess.
Yeah, it looks really thin. That's what I was pointing that out.
Because Michael Dell, he's been in the stock business a long time, so he knows what to do to try to get
that. That's a good way of putting it. He is in the stock business. People forget that little point. Okay, Coin had quite the wick. Look at this, after hours. So if this is correct, did it really do this? Is this true? 203
Yeah. So
to 169. Wow.
Be careful. So this was right when the earnings, right before it comes right out, and man, they ran that thing out like Coin just became the next greatest stock in the world. But it was so fast, and I was like, man, I'm not catching on that first move.
That was a good point. And actually, but that was trying to get my attention, but I was still trying to get out of some stuff. And then just the Australian and Texan in me, probably the Estonian too. Beyond Meat is just against too many of our principles. But Darby liked us almost. So I just said don't fall in love with it, right? So don't fall in hate, I guess. But it's kind of a joke. It just trades a certain way that's pretty easy for me, really. But anyway, I was trading that while I was doing this. So, but yeah, nice trades.
And then the Coin just ate it afterwards. Look at it, what it did afterwards.
It's incredible, really. I mean, I could bring this down and look at it a bit tighter.
It's crazy, but if you would have got, I mean, it went all the way up to $203.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, you can see it clear on 30 seconds. These are real trades, punters. This is a punter stock from hell.
Oh, man, I was like, I was not gonna buy it because it went up so far because I didn't want to get caught, especially after, man, ruining the great days.
Yeah. So I mean, I tend to not really trade too much this stuff, but this. So when we look at it, Bitcoin had a massive run today, like 37 to what was it? No, 35, I think. I mean, to 4, right? 40,000.
Bitcoin today.
This is a Bitcoin move right here. Look at this.
Oh man, Bitcoin. I'm still short a little bit around 49, and it just basically went back up there.
39. So as I said, I don't really trade those, but I watch them. So if you're a punter, this is the sort of stuff you want. Bang, bang. But if you are a punter, manage your risk, right? So some people are really good at that. So remember, everything's a different personality, right? So you find something that suits you. We're not used to this.
Article about the Canadian guy, the Trudeau, whatever his name is, the little sissy dude in Canada.
Oh, you can't say that anymore, mate.
Whatever. Yeah.
Trudeau, that's you talking about.
Yeah, Trudeau, whatever it is. So he's in. So all these truckers have been blocking up, not letting parts go through. And at first they went to GoFundMe, and they tried to take their money for themselves. Until they got some prosecutors against them, so they gave back the money to the people who donated. But so people have switched to the wallet, right? With Bitcoin.
Oh, I didn't know that. A good point.
If you look at the article, look at that stuff that came out about it, that they're going and tracking your the wallet ID, and they're telling people to seize it, all these accounts. I sent you an article this morning. If you look at, 4 or 5 this morning, if you check it.
On Coinbase?
that really hurt Bitcoin because now they could.
You know what? You sent me that.
So when you do, there's a block transactions on every Bitcoin you do. So they track the wallet.
Okay. So that was this sell. I got to go longer time.
Yeah, read that article.
I saw that article. Yeah. So that was part. Well, so this sell-off was that plus Putin, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I don't. They're seizing all these wallets. So and I don't know how they're doing it. I guess they're going to the chain, and I don't know how these wallets are where they're able to seize them at. But
I thought that was part of the whole Bitcoin thing.
Yeah. That's why it's it shatters that invincibility, right? Decentralized, right? You can't take my money. Well, I mean, the Trudeau and everybody's got a little game plan. I guess it kind of. I mean, this guy wrote that article, and the guy shorted, so you gotta. But it did. These things are happening.
Yeah. So keep an eye on all that because that's one of the reasons people buy it, don't they? To me, it just looks like a speculative penny stock.
I don't know who the guy was reading
kind
from,
of mentality thing.
The events that are happening are facts. You can look it up and see. So I got to read more into it, but
that's a good point.
That hurt Bitcoin. And these truckers thinking they could use Bitcoin because there's a wallet they use, and this wallet doesn't have nobody's information. It's just a wallet ID number.
Right.
And
privacy.
They go to the company. The company goes, we don't have no names. We don't know who it is. We don't have no information. So now they're going tracking the wallets.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty. What I really find interesting of Canada is that's got no real interaction from other countries. You barely don't know about it. So, Australia's community, there's quite a few Canadians, members and friends and stuff like that. So we're aware of it because of that, but it doesn't seem to get any publicity, which I find amazing. And there's no condemnation of what Trudeau's doing either way.
The frozen north, right? There's the frozen north up above the United States.
Right. It's cold up there. So, I just noticed I just got a message. So, for those, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but a friend of ours talking about Canada, so her ears must have been burning. Tracy Stute up in, you may know her, she's on Twitter as, what's she on Twitter as, mate? Chigo? But she's going to be on BNN Bloomberg tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central. And she's very good at energy and oil. She's Canadian, but she's from Chicago, worked at a lot of the big firms. She lives in Canada now. She's going to be on Bloomberg tomorrow. So she's very well versed in oil, gas. She's going to talk about the whole Russia, Ukraine, Europe, all that sort of stuff. And she'll have a bit to say about today, of course, is an EIA for... Sorry?
I think this news that came out with these truckers with Bitcoin and everything.
She'll talk about that. That's why you got me thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah, it could really project where Bitcoin's going to go, because if this is not decentralized, people can't have their...
Yeah. So that's the whole point when Matt and Johnny's on it, the DeFi part of it, yeah.
It's like once the mystique of something dies and people are like,
Yeah. 100%.
So, something to keep an eye on and see and exactly see what happened with these truckers more, and it's really, this is a big thing with Bitcoin right now, and especially with it selling off. Is it going to come back? I mean, today had a good day, but so did everything else in the world.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, well, let's move on because we have a lot to cover. But the only stock I traded in the after hours was this little beauty Beyond Meat. So it went up. As soon as it stored, I just gave it. So I think where did I get short, do you remember? I think 47, it was over 47.60, I think. You can see where I was ready to go technically. Beautiful. See the cheek out, all that. You can see over here where the other positions are. I did not look at options, to be honest. kind of just such a real busy day. Normally I would, right? That's another thing. So as Madavi said, earnings, where the other option lines are and things like that. Anyway, it just went like a brick. It was beautiful. So there's a quick $4 or so right there. Just said the one trade. That was it.
Nice.
That was when you were doing coin, I think. So I missed coin and you missed this. So I think you did.
I really don't trade that fake meat stuff.
Oh, that's why I trade. I just think it's wrong.
Yeah. So I was not even looking out for it, but there was a couple I was looking out for, like snaps and stuff like that.
Yeah, I compared this once, and I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, but anyway, I had a girlfriend once who was Methodist Presbyterian. So I remember going to church, as you do, impress her grandmother and all that, and I'm not Presbyterian, so and they gave me communion. It was grape juice, and I'm like, what the heck is this? So anyway. So it's kind of like that, right? If you're Catholic or Anglican or Lutheran, you have red wine at communion, not to bore you if you're not Christian. And certainly not pushing it. So you're just used to wine. And so I kind of compare that to this, right? So I want meat. I don't want crushed up peas or something. So anyway, I do digress. So that's it. Nice trade. But you can see, the things that set up was the pattern, ABC. We know, and the reason it attracts me to a lot of these sort of stocks is they're very cultish. So Tesla can be like this. It's a lot. I'm not saying Tesla, comparing it to it. I just mean the cult factor of it. Apple's another one that I trade a lot. So I'm aware of it, and then it started going up. So even if by this, they're already buying it on it. Right? They don't make money. They got problems. Their sales are down. That was all expected anyway. Not just being biased. That was, we knew all that, right? So that was just a really easy, good short. And there's enough there that you can get a good short on. Because of the coldish impact, there's a lot of people just buy it. Because they're all the dribbler type stocks, right? They're averaging and averaging and averaging every time. But I think this morning we saw them give it up. And the reason I say that is I went back and looked at the Fubus, the Palantirs, whatever other ones we talked about. A lot of those SPAC companies are that, right? They were up $6 to $8 or $5 to $7, big moves that usually comes from selling in a vacuum and those same people buying it back in panics, or people saw value in them at that point. So who's to speculate? Anyway, let's get back on to the real world. So we went through S&P.
Hey, Nate, did they figure out, like, beyond me, at first I thought the benefits were going to be supposed to be good for you.
They've been good for our pocket.
All we know is worse than a hamburger, so...
from health reasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if God put you on the planet to eat that stuff, he was having a bit of a laugh.
Yeah. I mean,
I get the people are vegetarian and all that. I'm not being disrespectful, but to me, it's if I'm a vegetarian, I have plenty of friends that are vegetarian from India and places like that. They don't eat that, right?
The stuff's not good for you.
Yeah. So, and I eat a lot of whole food. I do eat meat, but we eat whole food, meaning vegetables, meat. It's natural, right? Anyway, even as I said, beer's natural, right? Wine's natural. Anyway,
I know they're meat eaters. I don't know none of this stuff like that.
Yeah. So we went through SPOOs. I think everyone's comfortable with that. We've labelled this. You've always got to be aware of this being a 5, so we look at all this. I mean, it's definitely a 5 completion. I mean, a total completion. So we count out the ABCs. You can see as simple as that is, because it's impulse. Impulse bounces, it reverses. So I think we're all advert. Now, here's another thing I wanted to show. So we watch. If you recall, everyone, it's called the diamond or megaphone pattern, but you see at the top of markets. So this is the Dow Jones. So you can see on the Dow, It's been classic, right? 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, 4. See this? Today, it's busted it. So you can bet algorithms that trade off this kind of pattern, if there are some, or just chart watchers, they've sold it on it, and it came flying back through it. So, again, I don't specifically trade the Dow, I don't trade Bitcoin, but I watch. This is your other end of the speculator, right, is probably going to be in this sort of thing. So you watch it. When that got above here and that low, that gave a monster buy signal too. That's 1,000 points. Almost, isn't it? Yeah, like 700. So keep an eye on that sort of stuff. It'll help you trading. Because at the end of the day, you want to be confident, right? Let's have a look at that on a daily, and then let's move on. That's all I really watch this for. See, on a daily, you can see it even clearer, right? Isn't that uncanny? So people that mock charts and maths, you've got to use that. Use that with your crowd mentality and maths. And this gives me discipline more than anything. And that's, I remember from Gand, he said something like, I can teach you how to trade, but 85% are going to lose money because it's all programmed. So that's why I harp on a lot about, and we're going to get to that when trading settles down. A lot of people between us, we know, very successful, have come from good and bad times, recovered in industries outside trading, not just trading. It's all the mind. It's all relevant. So let's move on to energy. So do we need to look at Nasdaq and that? It's very similar. Let's get on to energy. So this is our chart, as you know, and we labelled this as 5 of 5 or part of 3 of a 5, right? Meaning it had to go down in perfect 3, and look what it did. This is just so beautiful. So remember, psychology is the biggest thing. So people see 100 on oil. That's all you read about, right? It's all we read about since 70. It's also 4/8. This is off an ABC. You already knew that it was going. I was on a chat yesterday, and you need to follow him too. Really good bloke. Did he stick on Twitter, but in the room, very good trader. Very disciplined, very maths orientated. As is Hap, who you probably know, also from Traders Community. Anyway, we discussed this because it was doing, and I mentioned this in the podcast yesterday. It was doing a pennant, but it's in plus 2/8, so you know it's overbought. But it means the more longer it stays here, the more likely it builds energy. We call that coiling, right? So it did it, but it started to break up in the afternoon, long before this move on the Putin attack. Yeah, I know the WAGs are going to think it's some conspiracy of Mercuria or someone, Russian ties, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. The important thing was it hit your target, hit plus 1/8. This is 105, I think, on Brent. Anyway, hit your target. This was just not only taking profit, but but it's also telling you to short the piss out of it, right? Excuse the French, but it's hit 4/8. It's getting given. You know what's going on. Whether you look, we all know my theory. It's not a theory. They've screwed up energy policy, right? And now you got people trying to redress it. Not to blame Trudeau, not to blame Biden, not to blame all that ESG. Well, it is what it is. You can't sweep it on the table. Be open-minded about it. I think we all want no pollution and all that, but you got to get to it. How you can get to it. Anyway, you know they're going to talk it down. So if you want that kind of rationale for the wave, it's there. So that was really good trade for us today. That's like $7 pulled out there. So look what it's done. So now we move this up. Is that the 5th of the 5th? Was it the 3 of the 5? Or was it a 5 of a different degree? More than likely, this is a first wave fully completed of your most bullish scenario. Or definitely a third wave, right? You may have one more wave. What does that mean? It's very simple. Look at your counts. Look at your waves. Keep it as clinical as you can. And ignore the people that aren't from the industry. That's why I mentioned Tracy earlier with her she's a TV, sorry, not one of these little. She's going on Bloomberg. She's in the big time. Anyway, and another lady you really want to follow, anything to do with the Saudis, is Ellen. And you'll see her every time as well. She wrote a book about it, actually.
Yeah.
And then, anyway, so that's the weekly. You can see it more poignantly, right? And look what I wrote. I didn't make this shit up. Boom, 8/8. So those who doubt time and price, we're predicting this in the future. Well, we're not, but the system is. How bloody good is this? Do yourself a favour, and it's amazing. Someone said, how do you not have thousands? I don't know. Well, there's not many people. We are an eclectic bunch, but we're just trying to show how clinical it is, right? It's all part of it. Isn't that amazing, when you see that, Madami? I mean, it's bloody right there. 100, boom. I'll bore you a little bit more of the 240, because again, that's 4/8. So we saw the Chicow, the Murray. You can see why we use this in Novawave, right? So that mathematical, those maths are made up by people that understood crowd behavior. People are sheep. That's why we look at Elliott, all this stuff, right? And that's why order flow works and all that sort of stuff. Okay, Natty. So Natty, Natgas that you are watching, that you know as NG, is a Henry Hub contract at a Sabine Pass, border of Louisiana and Texas. Very important to know your LNG. It's also important, it's relevant for your weather. It's also relevant because I use it for base load, for hedge, for the different regions, what they call bases, the different points, right, in natural gas. So what they did on this, and they keep doing it, they bought it obviously with oil because of the natural gas shortage from Russia affecting it for Europe. Well, they're all different contracts. They're not all coming from Russia. I'll give you a tip. Sorry, Mr. Putin. Little thing called LNG. There's also gas out through other parts of Europe, right? So don't believe all the crap you read out there by people. Anyway, obviously it's an effect. We're also at the end, coming into the end of winter. You wouldn't know it actually, but I don't think I mentioned it. But it's 42 degrees in Houston. That's just wrong. It's almost March. But so it's not as pertinent as what you would think at this time of the year in Europe. You know, so in Australia they just say harden F up. In Finland and Estonia they will say that. So don't believe every single thing you see by talking heads on TV, people not from the region, who all of a sudden are experts of bloody everything, right? I mean, there's people we see on Twitter, they have no bloody earthly idea. These are hard, tough people, right? I'm not saying it because I'm from there. Oh, I'm Australian, but my granddad, etc., right? And pa and all that sort of stuff. Dads and cousins and whatever. It's a tough environment. You just watch the Winter Olympics. Who did well? Norway, right? So they know what to live with and what to handle. And I can just tell you this, and I'll say it, and I said it at the top, what Putin did it reminded them of what their forefathers, what they went through. And as I said, it's Independence Day in Estonia today. They lost that independence between the Second World War to 1991, all these countries. Ukraine wasn't a sovereign country, but it's a region, very strong people. It's divided, obviously, ethnic. So you're not dealing with people that aren't tough, aren't educated and all that. So just think what you're dealing with. Not what they want you to do, to buy a book or click on a link or follow them or all this bullshit, right? So that all said, why did I say all that? Because this is Henry Hub. This isn't the Dutch futures price or the Nord Stream price. You know, well, Nord Stream 2 ain't going to happen, is it? You kind of screwed that up, Vlad. So just know what you're trading. It's kind of like trading a stock, right? And Madavi's trading, look, he's trading coin, this afternoon. I'm trading Beyond Meat. They're totally unrelated. This isn't totally unrelated, but you got to know what you're doing. If you're trading WTI, it's different to the way Brent trades. Similarities, 100%. Hopefully I'm getting that point across. So that's your weekly on that. That was a real easy layup short. If you trade this today, because you've come in, and the reason I said all that gibberish was to make the point that it's not Russia. Right? It's not even Europe. Right? So it's come up on that. You give it. And we had EIA coming out today. So you knew at least with the order flow and the optionality that it had to come closer towards that number just from risk and all that sort of thing. People like to take their profit when they're up a lot in these kind of real worlds. That's what the pros do, right? So, real clinical stuff there on Natty. And as I've said, don't trade this stuff if you don't know it. Like, I don't trade ags, and neither does Madavi, because we don't trade ags. So just because it's hot wheat or beef or something like that, we don't know it, or palladium, I ain't going to go near it. Because I may get this, but I also might be on the wrong side of it and get this, right? So I think that covers all that. I want to let's have a look at gold. Madavi's killed this one. I do sound like I'm biased, but I probably am when you talk about a mate that you've known since Adam was a boy. But also, forget that bit, I respect him as a trader, right? So my trade on this, as we know, we talked about, was simply buying the triangle. And as you know, as oil, you know I'm giving that. I'm taking profit. And I took profit way early. But look what it's done. Now, this has reacted from the dribblers get in here, right, Madavi? They're buying it here. He's buying it on accumulation on these. It sounds wrong. I don't mean to say buy the dips. I don't mean to insult you. But you're buying it on good demand points, right? But again, look at oil. Almost the same thing, right? And Natty. That's why we're trying to get them together. So it sells off on that. And this is where the punter's buying. The punter's probably buying here, but he's selling. The dribbler finally buys it. Or he says he buys it. Probably doesn't, right? So look at that. So when you're trading a power pattern, which is what a pennant is, all this energy, you're looking for the impulse. And that's where you take advantage, right? And people say, well, you know, and guess what? The war's still going on. This stuff is real, it's going on, what Russia's doing. So, and Ukraine's fighting back, etc., etc. So look at that. You know, if you want to be technically, you know it's plus 3H and plus 4H. So high risk. So look across here. You see that line? So you know when it come under it to take profit anyway. So, did we want to look at silver? Do any of us trade? Chemo trades silver sometimes, right? So look at silver. So if you want a confirmation of the oil, and you can remember that's black gold, right? I'm not just saying that because Texas thing. It's kind of a joke down here, but it is. What I mean by that, it's a fear or a what's the word, mate? Safe haven, right? So look at silver did. It got right to that triangle channel. It failed, so that's a spit and just crapped itself. That's a technical term. But look at that. Nice sell there, right? So you can see if you don't get emotional about it and you're clinical, you'll do these trades. You'll do them. You're going to sell that instead of buying it, right? And we do a lot on stocks. Look at that trade that Madavi did on, actually he did two of them, DELL and, what was the other one? Coin. You're selling, and it's contrarian, but not silly contrarian. I guess we should look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's on here, I think. Well, coin, another one, right? Dribbler's buying it. Look what it did. Right here to plus 3/8. Get out of the way. And look at that. Boom. That's a full 8. Now, I don't trade this, but if you trade it, it's just the same math. Someone sent a good message. Why don't you trade everything? You guys know what you're doing. The reason is if you trade too many, firstly, you got the disadvantage, you don't have an edge. Because we're not, if I'm a corn guy or a wheat guy, a grain trader, I'm so far ahead of someone like me, it doesn't really matter, right? But also it takes me away. Remember, how long did it take me just getting out of what I had overnight? Like 15, 20 minutes this morning, right? And I'm pretty quick on all that. So that's why I tend to like and dominate certain things that I know I'm good at. And stuff that I know that's just crowd, like earnings, that's when we do that. I hope that answers that question a bit better. So we're just looking at these because they're inflationary. People trade them. Soybeans, look at this. So I've mentioned a number of times. This is one I have traded a few times. So this, people laughed at when I broke this, and I just mentioned it back in the day. This used to be used as a measure of inflation, and therefore it became a safe haven. Look what beans did overnight. Now, I know there's a lot of talk of Ukraine, food bowl and all that sort of thing. That is good fundamentals for it, but they're part of the reason. Scarcity, safe haven, if you can believe it, something like that, and things like that. Let's have a look at what copper did. Barely nothing. Why is that? I don't have a nickel. I don't know if I can get nickel on here. But that's not in the region, right? So in the region is nickel, palladium. We talked about that yesterday. If EVs getting hit, the cost, the wheat and everything in the Ukraine. So you're looking at that whole region there. What else? Any other questions? If you want us, just text it if you need. If you want us to look at something. I think we've covered about everything. If I haven't, I guess we can look at Nasdaq by itself, yeah. So, as I said, very, very clinical, this one, and very similar to S&P. So I tend to trade this more like not how Wifey Alpha trades, in the sense that we trade a mixture of the algorithm, because it's algorithmic in as far as the maths aspect, but more the art, the trade, in the sense we're watching the more esoteric stuff as well. Look at the bottom. If I ever just had to sell you, if I was a salesman, had to sell you Novawave with Murray Math, patterns, cycles, this is bloody beautiful. And this isn't made up. You see this long before it happens. Look at the bottom. The weekly cloud. Incredible. Look at the bottom and look at the reaction off that. Quite incredible, right? Again, it's all maths and it's measuring people. So the reason I mentioned Wife, it was how I tend to trade this is in the ETFs rather than the futures. And there's a reason for that. Because they're easier to hold. The Nasdaq futures, like Madavi loves them, Czech loves them, because they move much bigger, but I'm a lot tighter a little bit. So, but I like to give them room. So that spread tends to get me out too much on that. So I prefer to do, if I'm short the SQs, and the other one for the longs, right? But look at that move. That's beautiful. So hopefully this stuff helps you. And like I said, I would suggest getting Sierra charts. They're cheap. I really like what they do. And if you've got I've spoken to them, where they can do a little Nova wave. If you want to have the same chart, they'll just call it that, and I'll program it. It's all free, by the way. We're not in it, like I said, it's just to help. But it's got the Murray, it's got that. And look, here's the daily from an Elliott point of view. 1, 2, classic. 3, 4, 5, right? This is either the first wave down of a lot lower, or this is your ABC finishing off. This is a poignant, I like that word today, a poignant move. 1,100, look at that. Almost 1,100. See that? But look what it did. And if you understand, I've said many times, be very wary of someone telling you they know Ichimoku and they haven't studied it. for real, right? They're trying to flog it. There's a lot involved in it. And to keep it easy, I actually combine it with this. So look at that Chico. But you don't know to buy it. You don't buy it here. You work it in with everything else. So look with the Murray. And that was just such a powerful buy. And this has helped me on the S&P as well, right? So they all work together. Why is that? 40% of this is the 22% stocks of the S&P, those 5 stocks, right? So, anything else, Madavi? Thing is, you're still there. You might be on a call right now. Let me just check. So give me 1 sec there. So have a look at that. So look at that chart, and there's one more thing. If you see it. I got one message here on the trade. Hang on 1 second. Just make sure it's all okie dokie. Sometimes I'm trying to be out of everything other than swings at this point. Yeah, good point. yeah, I think I might have mentioned that. Yeah, people, during the day, I don't know how you can be trading and doing this sort of stuff. You just can't, right? So that's clinical there, and yes, let's have one. So I'm not as we're not the brain's a little bit different today. Just long day, long night. So yeah, here's all we wanted to show was this. Look at Bitcoin. This is a great measure. So it actually charts very well. Again, minus 4/8. What did we just look at? NASDAQ. These trade perfectly. Look where it went to. 4,000. That's 6,000. Right? So it got to 3/8. So it's got almost an 8/8 move. It's a crazy move. And look what it did. It obviously ran stops here. So these are very good. So this is very helpful in using it if you trade NASDAQ. So look at that. It pulled back $3,000. So, I mean, this is a punter's delight, this one. I don't know if you call it trading because it's trading. I'll rephrase it under kind of more the clinical stuff I do, which needs liquidity. So, okay, yeah, good question. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So, yeah. So all those, as you know, we're fully transparent for most stuff we do. Just I'm not going to tell you everything. A lot of it, you never know who you are, right? But seriously, as you know, we bought a lot of puts, and I started buying them last week on energy companies, and some of them are a bit early. But the point was, when you buy a put, or buy optionality, you want to pay it at the best time as far as vol goes, and also timing the trade. So there actually got to be a skew. Puts got pretty cheap. So you're either to buy out of the money. A good example, the one we talked about was the BP one. The $30 were going for 20-something cents when it was 30 for next month. That sort of stuff we loaded up on. Halliburton, Apache, Exxon. For 2 reasons. One, we still had length in the futures, oil, so hedge, and also some of those stocks where we'd got out of them, starting to get out of them because it was so overvalued. So fifth wave and all that. Just don't get greedy. That's what kills you. And it hits your targets, but you wanted to work it more. But the stocks were different, right? They were overvalued as far as the stock market was. I know if you're a mega bull, you think it only goes up. But anyway, so that happens. We buy them real cheap. Then everything collapses. You know, vol, if you looked at vol, was like 36 or 7, the VIX. So it was worth my while to sell the options this morning because not only had they all collapsed, but vol was way up. So I own the asset. I own the put. So some of these were 6 and 7 and 8 baggers, right? The trouble was, there's no market makers. They're like, I'm not selling this shit, right? So you have to kind of make your prices a bit. So some of them I got out of too early, if not all of them, but they came back. So the question is, so that's the important thing, right? Even if the stock goes down, if vol comes in, a lot of them became in the money. So that was a moot point at that point. But if they're not in the money, it's going to really affect it. So all those decisions you want to make, and that's what goes through your roof, that mind, and that's why it took a little bit of time. So really, all those were very, very profitable. The Snap one was a little bit different, as we said earlier, because by the time that, and it's a different market, oil and gas tends to be more mature rather than the fast money. Mature, I just don't mean old. I mean a different type of investor trader, right? So that explained that. You know, the SPOOs hit our target. That was just beautiful. We're very fortunate to have that right. Again, on the puts there, I'd got out a bunch. It cost me a lot, obviously. But who cares yesterday? You've got to be systematic. The ones I had, we covered. Same as Apple. Apple was just a beautiful trade today. That was the one more that I was going to show you. It should be on here. I think it's on... It's either on stocks or US stocks. Yeah, here we are. So let's walk it through. This is just beautiful. This is one of those great trades. I just set up. So yesterday, easy short, as you know, I've been buying puts. Broke or list, clinical, covered that. Vol was through the roof. So you almost could be wrong and you'd be right. But look where it came to, right to this breakdown level on the weekly. Okay, so that's interesting. Is that anything else? So you go to your daily. Look what that was. I draw that line. That's a breakup point. It got to 152. See this? So the problem was I didn't really expect these. So I got long, like covered and on calls a couple of times, but I didn't expect this. I mean, who did, right? I mean, of course, someone on Twitter did. So I've got out a few times a little bit early. And then on SPOOs, as you said, I said earlier, expected it to pull at some of those points. It didn't. Pull back on them, so we got out a tad early. Lost a little bit, not too much. Got back. This one, right to the tanking. That's a daily move. That's $10. That's, okay, incredible. These things happen. If you miss them, it doesn't matter, but you want to give yourself every chance to work. And I was even doing that, and it still went a lot more. So this is impulse. You want impulse? That's impulse. So this can be complete. This can be 1, 2, 3. That's possible. It met all the levels, right? 1, 2, 3. That can be what that is, people. Okay? So bear that in mind. And that's right across everywhere. I won't bore you with any more. Just wanted to show you that. It's been a busy day. NVIDIA, same sort of thing. Big double bottom. See that? It's a weekly. So we're looking at longer term. So remember, go weekly, daily, 240, 60, depending how fast you trade. Okay, that's about it. Anything, Madavi, from you, mate? Don't hear now. Must be on the phone right there. So that's for me. Thank you for all the kind words. Thank you for all those that interact on Traders Community. It is a community of traders. A lot of oil and gas traders, a lot of S&P traders, and Nasdaq and individual stocks. So I love the way everyone interacts and people are bringing stuff. As we mentioned yesterday, with Volatility Radar has come up with his own, does a lot of work on Excel, really good programmer on Vol, Commodity Vol. Both those guys, they're so helpful. He always, in every week on our, we have the article on the website for oil around the barrel and into the vortex. Yeah, cheesy names, but so we've stuck with them. We don't have very good senses of humour. So on natural gas and oil, they come out every day, once a week, but on the day of, lots of really good people put input on that, and over time we'll all get on here and have Steve and I explain what they look at. So you got Greg's very good at options, very good, really masterful. Actually covers everything with vol, and actually has a service. So do yourself a favour. Subscribe to that if you trade futures and all the stuff I don't trade. He covers all that. But for us, he puts on all that stuff. I mean, all this stuff's free on the website and stuff. All the different vols, very helpful. You get to know what's going on. And in oil, it was very, very helpful to all of us, knowing that was a level up there. And look what happened, $7, $8 moves. So, the reaction trade can be better than the pro-action trade. And just many on that, if you go through and look at it, you'll see them, follow them, that are analysts, traders, and stuff like that. Specifically for oil and gas, which is the things to know right now. They're affecting the economy, not just the trade, but they affect other things you trade. Oil stocks, energy stocks, etc. I can hardly hear me, David. There's something coming distorted through on your microphone, mate. If you can hear me. Yeah, it keeps going in and out. I hear you trying to talk, but...
Let me fix it.
Oh, I heard that. So I think that covers everything from me. Anything you want to add, Madavi?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, to my brothers and sisters over in Estonia, happy Independence Day. Everyone in that part of the world, prayers are with you, thoughts are with you. Let's hope sense comes in. Big part of the world, millions and millions of people over there. So that's real, it affects it. Don't just think if you're a punter and dribbler, particularly if you're a bloody dribbler over here, if you're just thinking about your coffee might get too expensive or something might get hard or you might lose your $3 on your Robinhood account. Be real. Think of what's really going on over there. And the people that are so into themselves kind of disgust me if you haven't noticed. Right? Just think it's so materialistic. Anyway, that's all I really got to say on that. I won't. My Estonian's pretty bloody lousy, so I won't try to say it in Estonian. I did practice it earlier, and I was like, When I have my Persian mate mocking my Estonian, I know I better shut up. It is funny. But we'll see everyone tomorrow. Let's hope it sets down. What have we got out tomorrow?
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and pass it along.
Yeah, smash it, subscribe it. What? Just before, there's usually a few energy companies reporting on a Friday this time of year. Where did I put that? Where did I get it? It might have been someone good had it. Did anyone even look at the jobless numbers running today? I didn't look at anything today, really. Did you? Or was this trading? I should look what they were. So jobless claims were down, 17,000 to 232. GDP was revised up to 7%. Who knew? We were trading hard today. We didn't know any of that.
I came in and yelled it, and nobody else reacted to it. I guess it was nothing really happened.
Yeah, I think we were so busy with all the positions we had. New home sales came out. They were down 4.5%. What were they expecting on that?
The market this morning really didn't open up with a big thrust as you would have thought.
Yeah. Mester spoke from the... So usually we're on top of this. So it just shows you what matters and what runs the bloody market, right? It's the market. The market runs the market. It's an old saying, what gets oil prices up? Oil prices. Anyway, just seeing if there's anything we should all know that we might have missed that will affect. Mester said... What did she say? Acknowledge that the geopolitical landscape will play a role in determining appropriate price or removing accommodation. You know what? You did tell me that. You told me that because that was about the interest rates. Yeah,
that's the reason I thought it was. But some people, I don't know, got this fantasy about what was it?
What was the
other? What that rumor going around? the reason it reversed.
Oh, because of the rates, right? You know, that's what
No,
you said.
no, no, no. It
Oh,
was
there's
something
another
else that
one?
everybody would pass around on the fake news channel.
Oh, yeah. People trying to say it was central banks buying. That's what you're talking about?
No,
Yeah.
no,
No,
it
there's
was
another
not
one.
central
Well,
bank buying. It was some.
lower
Oh,
interest.
this. There were a bunch of Russian lovers that the sanctions are not as bad again.
Oh, yeah. I think Russia might think they're bad. But yeah, I see what you're saying. I got a feeling, just looking at where some of them emanate from, some of them are purely, they just try a bunch of them and see if they stick. And then they know once it goes up, they'll just buy the dip comes in. Remember, Roman was dead right on that. You and I were, oh no, people can't be that stupid. Oh yeah, they are.
But to me, I mean, how many people really care about the Russians? If sanctions were that bad or that, I mean, it's not going to really. But with the
It affects
Fed
Russia.
not raising rates, it's
Right.
going to make a lot bigger effect and how if these sanctions had a really whip to them or not.
Right, so where it affects, obviously, is going to be more Europe as far as the energy goes. But winter's over, and Roman's there. So he made a very good point of that. And as I said, I got relatives there, and they're like, yeah, whatever. And so, as I said, there's angst. They're annoyed that the way it was handled and what it's come to. Now there's disgust. So, unfortunately, for those, and we, of Russian, and we have Russian friends, a lot of work was rebuilt after the Soviet Union. I mean, older people, older than us and all that. But we know the relatives. So a lot of that hatred of the Russians, occupation and all that sort of thing, a lot of that had gone away, right? That obviously, how do I say it? So when Russification happened in a lot of those countries, Russians were put in there and to try and, I guess, make the countries more Russian, right? So when the walls came, we've been through this a lot, and I don't want to be offensive to someone who is of a certain ethnicity or someone I'm trying to achieve. Just trying to say what had happened. So all that kind of the hatred has gone away, like particularly in the Ukraine. A lot of, and then it gets swelled up, but as we know in the Ukraine is very much, we talked about the other day, American governments, Russian governments, and people used as pawns. We all know that. We know the whole situation, the whole Biden story with Hunter and all that. What's true and what's not, it's not the point. But so that Ukraine was a little bit different because of that, because you had two blatant different ethnicities. So you go through any of the other countries, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, in particular, they're very much Estonian, Finnish, Latvian. There is a Russian enclave. But anyway, that all said, most of those people are very open-minded. There isn't that. But what's happened in a very, very, almost, it was forgiving even myself. I kind of knew it was going to happen, but I didn't think it would go past that. I didn't expect war. I didn't expect that. So now that's happened. The mood is 360 degrees, and it's going to be very difficult for that to be forgotten. Forgiven's a different thing. Forgiven will come with new leadership. That's the only way I see it changing. Through all of Scandinavia, through all the Baltics, through all of Eastern Europe. And that's a fact. You can dress it up however you want to. These things are real, and it's 2022. No one expects this. Not in Europe. Especially not in the Baltics and Scandinavia, So that said all that, think of all that, and that's how those politicians are going to think that represent the people. Now, the politicians that represent big government, how do we say it nicely, Madabi? The industrial, military-industrial complex, which
The woman killer.
which obviously Biden represents, perhaps. is a different thing. So that's why you're seeing, it's not just the missteps in energy policy from Germany after Fukuyama and stuff like that. It's who owns these politicians. Is that the nicest way to put it? Huh?
He's a wartime president now.
Right. And that...
It's the media, bro.
Yeah. So if you think in CNBC, someone saying that or here goes down very well in Europe, you're kidding yourself.
Oh,
now,
go down anywhere, Middle East, nowhere.
Right. But specifically just there because we're talking about it. Definitely not in Middle East either. So that's the misstep. And I think enough Americans... The one positive I ever hear from Trump people or anti-Trump people is the fact there wasn't a war. So that's like his one star that a lot of people have. Unfortunately, that bloke has come out and said stuff about Putin 2 days ago. Oh, how good that was and all that. I would suggest he's done with that. If there was any doubt about him, he just did himself. If he wants to be a radio star, fine.
The same thing if you go look.
Sorry?
There was an article out today when I interviewed him today. He said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I'm not a lefty.
No,
clearly I'm not one of those righties. We're kind of in the middle. We think for ourselves. And I don't know how anyone can be all right and all left anyway. It blows me away, partisan politics.
I hate both of them.
Yeah. So to me, that's the dumbest thing the bloke's ever said. And that's saying something, right? He said some pretty stuff. And the other bloke, Biden, you obviously don't have good views about him either. As far as that goes, right? I mean, as I've said many times, you shouldn't judge a country by their leaders. Unfortunately, you should be able to. They should have a strong leadership. But email me if you got a good leadership in the world somewhere. Your smaller countries seem to do a lot better. But anyway, that said, that all gets into the mix, and you got to, and even more so, more times than ever, you got to trade these markets using what the market's doing. Listen to the market. Don't be influenced by all the. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm probably not doing a very good job of doing it, but
propaganda.
Yeah, so much of it, but the propaganda isn't what you think. Propaganda's
talking about getting people killed.
It's about that, but it's not just about this, but everything seems to be about making money for the people that, rather than in spite of everything.
Making money for themselves and their networks.
Yeah,
they don't care about people.
I mean, it's so wrong, and we see these wars over and over. We see them in the Middle East. We see them in Europe before in Yugoslavia. Now we're seeing them in the Ukraine. We're seeing in South America all these kind of mini wars, and we're seeing it's almost a war on.
Here's the difference people got to think about. In other countries, when they, like you were saying, when they hear this stuff, they're outraged by it. Mm-mm. But in America, they celebrate it because these media people make this guy look.
But I see that change, though. I'm seeing a change. And you're seeing it in Canada, right? It's a war amongst themselves, which is bizarre. I mean, war isn't just dropping bombs on people. It's also getting people against each other and ganging it up and keeping them sated. And so all that stuff is in the mixing pot, and that's why we look at Elliott Wave and how crowds react. Like, I expected a bounce today off lows. We all expected that. We did really well. So we came in short. We bought the bounce. You can see it. It all went to plan, right? But this euphoric bounce is what we're trying to explain that me and Madavi just didn't recognize and check as well, because we've been around, but we also lived in different places. And a lot of fellow Americans, same thing. A lot of that greed just seemed to kick in, didn't it?
Well,
good word. You said they celebrated. They did celebrate it on places like CNBC.
Yeah, so I have had the privilege of these wars and stuff kind of, affecting me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You've been through it as a youth. Yeah, you saw it.
Yeah, I know. I was rooted and thrown somewhere I'd never been. I was like, oh, well, so I know how it feels. you know. So a lot of those people is happening to. People just don't see it out here, and then you come out here. Sometimes they don't open it. They're not baking a cake for you if you come here.
Yeah. I mean, so all those things get in and they're real and they affect. So that's why you don't want to be emotional. But all these people you're trading against, they're emotional. So that's why I try to understand them. And we kind of, we differentiate between dribblers all the way to traders for a reason, because so you'll start to recognize them. And if you got some of those bad habits, to get rid of them, but then you want to recognize what they're doing, you almost want to do the opposite.
Yeah.
95% of the time.
And that's how they sell the public into it. It's a whole machine that this country is set up. And if you haven't gone to war, you're not a president. You're not a wartime president.
So yeah, right. But so understand this about the military-industrial complex. It's not just America. It's Russia, France, England. Look at the big companies. Germany. They're all part of it. It's very not right. Right. So it's not right. But anyway, let's move away from that. I just wanted to kind of give a spin of how different countries look at it. But it's something I just want to share from our buddy CLF Trader. So I know the bloke, really good trader. His dad's a good trader, and he worked for another bloke I know who was a great trader. The bloke he worked for is Boku rich. I won't say how much, but it's a lot. Anyway, very good trader. He was a very big trader, and I mean, it's been a long time, but stocks and futures. So he just put a good point. Someone asked me, how do they do size, right? So I tend to trade things that do size because I used to trade that kind of stuff, right? Over the years, you melt it down as you get older and older, and your priorities change. Anyway, so look, you got to be in something liquided. I mentioned how the bloke would to do a yard on a euro or something. So in the SPOOs, if he wanted to do 8,000, this bloke's position was typically 8,000 lots. That's his typical position in SPOOs. So in a day like today, he's got to do that in increments. So he'll do that in 10s and 20s and 100s all on the dome, right? So on TT, he's a good bloke too, Patrick. So they have the X-Trader, which many of us use to trade or have used. You can use the island. So that's how all that goes through. So you're not seeing it all, but I want you to understand how it all goes. And they're not worried about every little tick. That's the other key. And I hope we're getting that point across.
One comment I was going to make. The difference is in Western countries, and a lot of people are probably not alive to gone through the glitch.
From that, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that. I just saw
out here in North America, nobody's gone through that, so it's all like a cartoon to them.
Well, in many countries, I have to say that's similar to Australia, other than long before we were all born. But the only time Australia was the Second World War, Darwin. So,
but once that hopefully it never happens. I hate to see it, but if it does happen, that generation will be shell shocked forever, ever wanting something like that happen again.
Right. It is a worry that all this stuff is desensitized. A lot of us have relatives that have been in wars or lost in it, and I'm fortunate I never have. Madavi has. He's seen it. Yeah. So, anyway, we did end up on a somber note. I was trying to finish on a happy note.
You got to put yourself, because I grew up out here, so I know how they're good people that would never want to see it. But if you've never experienced it, you don't know, and what the media sells it's like nothing's happening. It's just like they're playing patty cakes.
Yeah, it's all about the money side of it, which is deplorable, right? Really, when you think about it. We're traders. That's what we do. So we got to be clinical, and that's why I kind of push the maths thing and the mental aspect. And I'm a big fan of just on the weekends getting away from it all. just relaxing. Have a healthy lifestyle if you can. I don't. That sounded like boring. I didn't mean it like that. Just try and stay fit and stuff like that. And mentally healthy is so important. And I thought with all this stuff going on, the war, obviously I'm a little bit biased. With my relatives coming, you know, I'm Australian, but my ancestors are from that neck of the woods, for the most part. So I'm a little bit sensitive to that because I know it. And Madavi's sensitive it also because he's not from that region, but a region that's also seen it. And much worse, really, especially in later times, right? So that's all we wanted to share. And what I like about it, when we share this stuff, a lot of you people really hit us up and share it. So it's a point how fortunate we are here. Don't forget that. We're not preaching, but markets react to that. So our markets are affected by oil. They're affected by gold. They're affected by currencies. They're affected by debt markets. And that's I kind of mock dribbler stocks, not for the reason you think. It's just that the way they behave, those markets, unless you take it when they're hot, if that's all you do, kind of the way we trade earnings, you will lose everything. You'll get shocking habits, and you will lose everything. I've seen it way too many times, right? Anyway, on that note, one thing I just saw that may be relevant, given a lot of the reason we mention it, what upsets us or annoys us, is when we see two things. People that we know are full of shit going out and making out they feel sorry. Oh, the end of the world, the social justice kind of crap, when they're not really like that. And the flip side of that is the ones that mock and almost want war, right? So a lot of people want China to attack Taiwan right now because Russia's doing this because they can make money out of it. I mean, that's pretty disgusting. So I just saw this, the Taiwan premiere, so on Live Squawk, which is a good news feed that amalgamates Reuters and everything, says Taiwan will join democratic countries to put sanctions on Russia over invasion of Ukraine. So I actually have separate business dealings with China and Taiwan. Yes, Shay likes to talk. Taiwan's us and all that. The reality is it's a long time. That's an engine. That is the semiconductor capital of the world. What's it control, Madavi? 70 or 80%? It's like unbelievable. So that goes, it's a lot worse than oil in the sense how ingrained it is of the supply thing. Also, most people in Taiwan have relatives in China, in Hong Kong, maybe the diasporas like Australia, America. So it's not as if it's purely us versus them, right? So keep all that in mind. But in saying all that, an area that I kind of know backwards, I didn't think Putin was going to bloody attack Kiev, right? So I just wanted to share it. It came across the news. Huh?
They're laying down the groundwork to go China, go to Taiwan. I see it every day. I see them.
All I can say, if that happens, it's done. It is done.
Eventually, one day it will happen. But
I totally disagree. But
we'll see. I don't know. I hope it doesn't happen.
All I got to say is if that happens, it'll be like something you've never seen before as far as war and destruction goes.
But they're goading China into a place where they feel like if there's security, they have to do it. And once you push them there, it could happen.
Taiwan makes China unsecure?
Not Taiwan. The rest of the world are goading them because they're talking about independence. Taiwan doesn't want to break away. All right, they just want to.
Hold it back a little bit. A lot of countries already recognize Taiwan, have done for a long time.
Whatever.
Right?
I'm not
unofficially.
I'm just saying it's part of the UN, whatever. But they don't want to.
Yeah, but that's only because China has a seat and it can't ever get changed, right?
Yeah.
Unless they agree to it.
So they're goading China into it.
Who's goading it?
The world. A lot of these people are goaded to Russia and all this stuff that's going on. people behind that do these drums and push the presidents. He's a wartime president. You know how it
Oh,
is.
you're talking about Biden.
I'm just talking about the.
Well, okay. So here's what really matters with Taiwan. Taiwan's the countries that recognise them and the countries that trade with them, other than the US and Europe, are all in Asia or Australia. They're all very close, right? They all rely on each other. China relies on Australia, for example. Japan relies on Australia. China and Japan rely on each other. Taiwan, semiconductors. It was a brilliant move by them. So all these propaganda channels that come out of Russia, come out of China, and you can really call CNN and Fox propaganda too, right?
They're U.S. ones.
Right, so it's all bullshit. Look behind it. Look what really goes on, and it's logic if you want to open your eyes. If you listen to any of them, you're going to be swayed by it. If you have a bias from any of these countries, any that are, then it's going to be. If you're from the Middle East, if you're from Russia, if you're from China, if you're from different parts of Europe, America, you're going to have a bias. But at the end of the day, they're human. It's logical. The devastation is too big. Now, Putin somehow didn't read that playbook, and you'll see how that evolves, right? And there's all different conspiracies about everything. Just try and be logical. Change what you can change. Don't worry about what you can't. I think Albert Einstein said that. At the end of the day, what I'm talking about is really, as from a trading point of view, how it affects your trading and the market's trading. But at the end of the day, the reason I brought it up is because that is going there, and that is moving things. That will move the yen. That will move different markets. It'll move semiconductor stocks and all that. If they were silly enough to do that, nothing surprises me. It will be pretty charismatic what happens. So pretty obviously. So anyway, what that's. I think I copied. I just put a few news bites out there.
And also, a lot of people are looking for something like this because they think they're going to go to, the God's going to come back, and there's a lot of religious factors into all this too.
Oh, you mean traders or the people in the market? I mean, sorry, not the market, the world.
People are very influential in the United States. There's a whole section of them that believe in the.
Wow! You switched topics there. I don't know how you got to that. I know you're talking about.
No.
You're talking about the rapture thing in Middle East. So they want war. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, they think that the end is going to come and they're going to
go. End of days. That's it. Sorry, I got it. Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors, and these are But anyways, let's hope.
Yeah. So where that I think really only can affect markets is if people that get in power can get in power can change that.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. That's a scary thought. Gee, we went dark. We went dark here in the last 20 minutes. So China's going to take over Taiwan, end of days. What else, Jesus?
I don't believe it's dark. I
need to have a glass of wine now, mate.
Why these stuff keep happening over and over again?
Yeah. Well,
different people have different reactions from different parts of the world.
Because people can be controlled, right? That's what a market is. 85% lose. The herd mentality. And that's because they just blind follow. So a market, that's a good discussion, really. A market is a replication of all those emotions.
You said something very well last week. You go, when their president's not going so well, they got the plan book,
Oh, yeah, redirection. Plan A and Plan B.
How to make them presidential. Their people are not dying, but other people around the world are, and nobody sees that. That's the cost.
Well, I think the best example of that, the two best examples. The first one would be the two Iraq wars. You very rarely hear of how many Iraqis, majority Iraq, Syria, any of these countries, how many died. Same as in Vietnam. You never really hear about... I mean, you do in those countries, of course, but we're talking about the Western media. You'd never really hear that, yeah. That's true, 100%. And you'll see that. I mean, it's really. I mean, it's just an indictment, really, on humans. You know, we're all guilty of it. Not saying we're saints, but
No. It's the culture, how it is. But the reason is, again, is they've never experienced it. And the video is like it happening it might as well happen on Mars because it's not happening here.
You know, you're not wrong. It sounds silly, but you're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, they do say the greatest generation in the States and in the West was the Second World War, those that fought and rebuilt their countries. And that fits in exactly what you're saying, you know?
But that didn't happen here either. It happened in a far
well, not the fighting, but the deaths did. The people that died and the wounding and all that.
Came back, and that's where they try to always hide up. Ever since World War II, where it started, not Vietnam, where they started showing those. Then we see.
Oh, yeah. Actually, there's a good thing on that. Actually.
Yeah, since then they make sure that stuff doesn't show on TV no more.
Right. Well, good discussion. And yeah, I think it's one that people should have. We don't. Again, we're not trying to preach anything. We're as bad as unpreaching as you can get, probably. But what I'm very, very, very big on psychology and recognize that oil's popped back over $95, by the way. So that got down to 91. I'm talking WTI, 91.40. And now we're back at 95. So we've rallied almost $4 off the low. So that's roughly 50% low to high, right? So, going to be interesting what happens here, how they handle it. Let's see the mess that was created, how it gets cleaned up. Clearly, the US President Biden didn't understand Putin. He's now saying, yeah, we told everyone this was going to happen. More goaded him, but obviously Putin had been planning this for a long time. We all know that. Everyone knew that. There was different strategies the guy had. He obviously thought, you know what? I think I can do this week, whatever. All those things, there's so many unexpected things, unexpected consequences in everything. So expect the unexpected for the market. Don't take anything for granted that this is going to go straight up or this is going to go straight down. You really don't know, right? That's why we use that. And remember, when we look at those charts, that first big move is played out now. We've had the 5 waves down. We got to play out our next move. Is this the first wave down of something major, and this is the correction of that? Or was that the bottom of some major correction? So you got to keep your wits around you, right?
Biggest moves happen in bear markets. Again, today was another crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Was that a bear market rally? You like to buy the dip sort of thing?
To me, all this has been. And
it certainly has been to now, but we got to respect the count. The possibility was with a minus 4.8, but it's not on the weekly or daily. As unlikely as it may be, we got to respect that was the correction, right? Or
during the pandemic, do we ever see moves like this? No.
Yeah, you do, but not day to day, or not day to day, but
not this frequency.
Yeah, it's like 1 or 2 in the third wave, and yeah, it's more. 100%. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But where you do get them is at the bottoms and tops. That's why I'm saying I'll be open-minded, right?
Yeah.
It's the impulse. But yeah, so to be clear, that move's played out. That one we looked at, the big short, that played out. The big long on oil, we did the short there, and then the puts on the oil companies has played out as well. That wasn't a big play. So some of our plays are just 3 or 4 days. Some of them, we've been doing the short on oil. The long on oil for a long time, 6-7 months. I want to see the correction from here. Natty, as you know, we tend to do that more around weather. And the bear on stocks we've had since the start of the year. So nearly 2 months, actually. That's been a pretty good ride.
A lot of money around because that's why I think we're getting these huge moves because they're bringing it back. They think the playbooks are still in. And I think
yeah. Kind of the way, and I think that's why we talked about earlier, the segue of the war people, the war experience, sorry. A lot of people have never experienced that in the market. Like, I don't mean war, I don't mean disrespect lives, but the whole pain and angst of, because people, when they worship money, and the reason we're kind of talking around this sort of stuff is they're just so self-centered, so into themselves. You know, they call them like godless, not just God, but everything's themselves. Money's all that matters until you feel the truth, because the biggest pain to them is losing their money. So when they think they can keep getting it back, it's not a pain, right? And you see, that's the bit I mentioned at the top of the hour with the CNBC people go, oh, you don't, it was someone on CNBC, I didn't mean to host. I can't, he's irrelevant, whoever it was. But until you actually take the loss, you haven't lost money. Now, the IRS says that, your accountant may say that, but if they keep going down, or need that money, you got to sell those shares to live, right? You've lost some money. But that mentality's out there. It's bizarre, right?
Well, I think Warren Buffett said that, but Warren Buffett holds up for 50 years.
Oh, he said that? Oh.
And he said something like that.
I think it could have been him. I just heard it. Yeah.
You know, in 2008 when stocks were crashing, all those guys were coming. They're saying, well, you haven't booked it. You just got to add more. You just got to buy more and get yourself a nice average.
Jeez. It's funny how when it's someone else's money, they can say that.
Well, these guys are trillionaires, so...
you're talking about Buffett. Yeah, I thought you were talking about...
Came on TV. They're not thinking of a guy who's got, doesn't have billions of dollars to keep adding more. He's got like a couple $1,000, and his $1,000 just went away.
Right, 100%. Okay, mate. Good discussion. We've been long. God, this is about our longest bloody podcast ever.
We pop on another topic, and
we did kind of meander. What's funny is because we're tired of being up all night, we don't know when to shut up. Probably, which I said that about Kathy Wood today. But anyway, she doesn't know when to shut up. Well, have a great evening. Thanks for all the messages, support, all that sort of stuff. The ideas. Smash the like button, as they say. Subscribe, share if you like it, if you think we're useful. If you don't think we're useful, don't. It's a free world.
And let us know if we dragged on, talked about some edge segments or that you don't find appealing, useful, or whatever.
Yeah.
At least I get a message.
That's how you get them. Okay, mate. See ya. Thanks.
Later.
Glorious one. Bye now.